Tyler, we forgot to have Michael do
his intro.
Yeah, this week is not just Tyler and Nick. We got a guest on this week, a really cool guest.
Michael.
You guys might know him as Mike Holmes Jr. And we talk about nothing to do with TV or anything, but I want to urge you guys to listen to this one. I don't even know which one to start with. Like, what rabbit hole should we tease this podcast with?
I don't know. I think it was just kind of less of an interview, more of sitting down, grabbing a coffee and just kind of talking and getting to know him.
So it started. I DM'd him a couple weeks ago. He posted something about the skilled trades and how the skilled trades were lacking because of the stigma around the trades. And I DM'd him. I said, I disagree. And he goes, well, then let's talk about it on the podcast. Well, actually, I think I said that. I disagree. We should talk about this on the podcast. And he signed up, and we talk about that. But we go way beyond. Like, we talk about the stigma. We talk about the issues with the skilled trades. And then we just keep going all the way to steroids and fitness. Yoga. And I mean, yoga being the number one thing you should be doing if you're in construction.
Yeah.
That might be fair to say based on the conversation.
I don't think it would hurt.
But at the end of the day, we talk about like ultimately what we can do for this industry, for ourselves, for our businesses, for our family, and the order of priority in which we should make those things.
Yeah, it was just nice to kind of see him detached from kind of what he grew up doing and, the shadow of his dad and kind of the name he's made. So it was just more about Michael, which was nice.
Yeah. So give this one a listen, guys.
There he is.
What's up, guys?
How's it going, Nick?
This is the first time I've ever logged in and everyone was here before me.
I feel like I've done enough of these where I'm like, okay,
you're just prepped, right?
Try and be early. That's the key.
I like it.
Yeah. And I
was cutting it close.
Yeah. I did read the email where I think it said something about trying to be on 10 minutes early, and I was, so I was like,
oh, I don't know who wrote that. We're never on 10 minutes early.
Yeah.
But all is good. How are you?
I'm well, man. I'm really well. Just it's a rainy day here in Ontario. Taking care of just a day doing odds and ends, like just taking care of a lot of things on the list.
Are you a contractor, like a full-time contractor?
Yeah. So I mean, right now, little background. I'm a licensed general contractor. I went to school for carpentry at George Brown College. Finished, got my carpentry license or degree. I started in construction before television, and now television just monopolizes most of my time. So I don't have a side business, but we're not live. Are we live right now? We're not live.
Yeah.
Or this isn't live.
We're live.
Yeah, we're live.
No, it's not live. We're recording.
Oh, no, we're recording.
Yeah. Okay, so I can say this like candidly without this being put in the podcast.
Sure, we'll have to edit it out.
We'll see. I'm toying with the idea of opening up my own business.
Got it.
Up here in in Ontario.
That's exclusive content. We got to release that.
Yeah. No. Yeah. And only I think my wife and a few other people know that one. So I'm just like, I love doing construction. Like, it's something I started at 14 working for my dad.
Yeah.
And just started as a laborer, worked my way up, ran job sites, and it's something I love to do. And television, it happened as naturally as it could when your dad's on TV. But I was doing full-on construction, had no plans of actually getting into television myself until it happened.
Now, before we keep rolling on this, do you prefer Mike or Michael?
I feel like I prefer Michael.
Okay.
But it's like most people know me as Mike Holmes Jr. It's like, I always say, it's like my dad named me the same name, so I'm like, I got to differentiate myself somehow.
Yeah.
So grow out the hair. And
It's funny. I was reading through like your schedule, and I was like, all right, he's got Mike Holmes Jr., but his email is Michael. And I was like, there's only 2 reasons he would have done that. Number 1, his dad's got Mike and he wanted Michael.
Yeah.
Or number 2, he wants to go by Michael because, to differentiate yourself from your father. So we let's stick with Michael.
I love it.
But it's funny. When I started my business, I made my email Nicholas at like NS Builders or whatever it was. And every time I went to a job, they're like, "Oh, hi, nice to meet you, Nicholas." And I hated it. And I'm like, "Why are you calling me Nicholas?" And they're like, "That's your email literally says your name is Nicholas Schiffer."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Oh yeah, that is very true."
They're paying attention. Yeah. For me, it was I got called, I think, everything but my name. It was like Junior, MJ.
Yeah.
All these nicknames, and then I was like, you know what, I need to really. Once I was establishing a name for myself, I'm like, I need to choose a name. I can't go by every name under the sun. And I prefer Michael, and it's easier when someone's like Michael on the job site versus Mike, one head turning versus 2.
Totally. Yeah, we'll stick with that.
Yeah.
So you had posted something a couple weeks ago, and
getting right into it.
Yeah.
We got to make good time.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Let's go
for a good time, not a long time.
So I don't remember the specific post, and I even try to like go back, and I didn't put a ton of effort into it, but the premise of the post, maybe you remember better than I, was something to do with the skilled trades and the issue that we're facing in the skilled trades. And I think that you had made a comment or shared an opinion on it that I disagreed with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You said, well. Anyway, I'll let you finish. Go ahead.
No, and you know what? Now that I'm saying it out loud, I realize I think I disagree with it live in a DM. But it sounds like you remember it. So
yeah, it's more of like we bring it up a lot because we work with Skills Canada, World Skills, work with Skills USA a bit, but I'd say we do a lot more with Skills Canada. And what I've seen with a lot of people within that organization is that, and my own experience is that the stigma in the skilled trade still lives true to this day. However, it is changing. So I think the post was, and
that's what it was.
It was about the stigma in the skilled trades, and you had messaged me and said, I've seen a lot of change. You've seen a lot of change over the years, and I agree, and I have as well. And I think maybe, moving forward, I should recognize that a little bit more as well, rather than just harping on the issue. I think we, sometimes need to recognize the change because there is change happening. But, just for example, Ontario alone, there is, I think by the year 2025, we're estimated to have something about 350,000 people shortage of skilled trades. So that's a large number of people. We see rises of labor going up. We see material costs going up, all across the skilled trades. So, we do see the stigma being, teachers, parents saying, you don't want to get your hands dirty, you don't want to get in the skilled trades. However, in the skilled trades itself, I have seen a huge change. I see people like yourself. I don't want to call you the professionals. I don't want to say influencer, but like people that are influencing the masses out there, showing that, there's huge pride in this trade. There's huge pride in this industry when you do it right. And you're teaching people the proper ways of doing it. So there is definitely a lot of change happening. And
I think what you said is like we do need to recognize that. And I'm not oblivious enough to know that, or to think that, it's completely gone and there's no stigma. There's a very real part of this that since, I'm speaking collectively here, that we're so involved with our industry and bettering the industry that, listen, I'm probably blind to a lot of the stigma because I'm so surrounded by people that are pro, blue collar. And that's a real thing, right? When when you drive a Jeep, when you own a Jeep, you see 1,000 Jeeps on the road. When
so
you don't
true.
own a Jeep, you never see it, right?
That's a great analogy.
But that's, for me, it's right now, all I'm surrounded by is people that promote this. But I do think that, when we talk about the stigma and, the comment that you made, like when parents are like, you don't want to get your hands dirty, I see that as like our parents' generation. right? And there's a lot of like that generation that pushed us away from handwork and quote unquote blue collar and pushed us towards college, where, you know, my kids and I think our kids, like we're very much on the opposite side of what our parents promoted, like completely opposite. And I would like to think that the majority of our population or our generation is on that side of the coin, and it's probably a heavier amount, but not entirely, right? Like, of course, it's never going to be 100%. But there's that generation in between where it's like not the kids that are under 10, but maybe the kids that are 16 to 22 right now that, you know, there's that generation that, you know, none of us are kind of involved with.
Yeah.
With the exception of like what we promote and what we get back from like schools and things like that. And I'm not really sure where I'm going with that thought, but that, you know, the stigma, yes, it's real, but I do think that the shift is there. We're just the 350,000 jobs that are about to open up and be vacant is because of decisions that were made 10, 15 years ago.
No, you,
right?
you
Like,
definitely have a point. You have a like when technology changed, you know, I remember, you know, our generation now, we were fortunate enough to grow up without the internet, without, you know, these great tools that we have today, but we experienced that evolution. And I think as that was happening, parents saw like, oh, here's a window, here's an opportunity to make good money. You know, here's like, it's like, you know, I can speak in Canada, this might be like a foreign language to you, but, you know, there was a big boom in Alberta years ago, and everyone's like, we need to go out to Alberta, you know, open up a carpentry company, a roofing company. There's so much work to be done out there. And I think parents saw that as an opportunity. And at the time, you know, the stigma was much larger that, you know, if you're in the skilled trades, generally, maybe you're a high school dropout, you just don't have what it takes to get a university degree, a college degree, whatever it might be. So I think that was playing a larger role back then, but I definitely agree with you. And I think, you know, after I thought about it after you messaged me, I'm like, it's something I need to, and I want to make, talk about more often, that there is a change happening. Oftentimes we always focus on, I don't want to say focus on the bad, but it's like, you know, with our show,
we're trying to counteract the negative, right?
Yeah, we're trying to counteract the negative. But for our show, for example, we're like focusing on, we highlight a lot of good contractors, but also a big part of that is focusing on how to do things the right way, and then why it was done wrong in the first place. You know, how there's a lack of education in the field. And like, I'm not sure, you guys are in Boston, is that correct?
Nick's in Boston. I'm down in near Philadelphia. I'm in New Jersey, though.
Okay. So in Ontario, there's no, I don't know what the laws are where you guys are, but there's no law saying you need to have a contractor's license to do a renovation. Like there's, to get your contractor's license, for example, like I went to school for carpentry. I was telling you guys that earlier. You know, it's an apprenticeship program. It's done over 3 years. And that was a very lengthy process, but you don't need to have your carpentry license to do jobs. It's something that, you know, a lot of people pursue extra to, you know, either get more money in the union or just to learn more. As a contractor, I went and got my contractor's license through, I think, a 10-minute verbal test. You know, I'm like, and the questions I was asked, like, it wasn't like, here's a 2-hour multiple choice test, or here's like,
right,
you need to read this book. So to me, I'm like, in itself, that was a bit of a joke. I'm like, this should be, I'm proud of being a contractor.
It should be harder. Right.
It should be harder because, you know, some of the best contractors I know are well-educated people. And there is a ton of well-educated people in this industry, but that's not what's highlighted. And I think that in itself, the fact that I'm like, I could just walk in and get a license, and I don't even need a license to do jobs, that pisses me off.
This podcast is brought to you by Duration Molding and Millwork. If you guys want to find out more about them, durationmillwork.com. Check them out on their Instagram as well. Tyler, what I like about their Instagram is they have a lot of what they're showcasing. Well, everything that they're showcasing is custom because this is the true exterior product that they're milling in their shop. It's the only place that is manufacturing this stuff. But I didn't realize some of the tooling that they had in their shop and the capabilities. Obviously, we've talked about it, but you know, on their Instagram, they're showing all of this stuff actually being fabricated. And one of I think the coolest things is, I'm going to say it, we've said it before, the brackets.
Yeah.
Because they're like so three-dimensional. And oftentimes, like I constantly zoom in on Instagram, which I wish they had that feature like where you could zoom in and like zoom in again. But they're laminating this stuff in such a three-dimensional way, and the stuff really does look like wood.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of times that is traditionally done with wooden laminations, and they will end up delaminating because they are wood. So the fly ash is not going to delaminate. It'll remain essentially one piece and appear as one piece, where a lot of times you'll go around to the older homes and you'll see those brackets and you'll start seeing all the different delaminations or the end grain. So you don't have to worry about that with their stuff. It'll appear as one piece and hold up as one piece forever. But yeah, their tooling and their shop and their capabilities there. I know we had that discussion with Keith privately, but like how much research and engineering and money and systems they've developed to be able to produce these products on a high level with a quick turnaround. And it's pretty impressive to see how much focus has been put. And I know, they have the shop space and they continue to grow that and kind of outfit that so that they have even more capacity. So it's exciting to see that growth. And I do not believe they have any intent on slowing down. So
no, and if you actually go to some of their tagged photos, we talked about this a couple weeks ago, but that fireproof fence is done.
Yeah.
So, which is sick, and it's it's in Northern California, and they basically built this fence around a client's home to help prevent the spread of fire, and because it's a fire resistant material, which is huge.
Yeah, they actually shot me a DM. I guess they were listening to the podcast and were like, "Hey, we heard you talking about us on the podcast. Thanks so much.
Awesome.
Like, it was a pleasure to be able to use their product, work with them, and be able to kind of outfit our customers with some fire protection." So
that's super cool.
Win, win, win all around.
Well, if you guys want to find out more, durationmillwork.com. This podcast is brought to you by Rockwool. So we've talked about the R-Class building, but this week I want to talk about fire-resilient homes. So I was actually chatting with Rockwool on a project recently, and we had started talking about fire resistance and and best practices when it comes to building fire-resilient homes, which they actually just hosted a seminar on that, which you guys should make sure you check out the R-Class program because there's a bunch of free educational seminars. But one of the things that they were mentioning is that Rockwool is the only insulation material certified by CAL FIRE. And, and this is, something that is huge. And if you're building in California, or you're dealing with the concern of fire, wrapping your house with a material that is not only fireproof, but also certified by CAL FIRE. I mean, I don't think you can get much better than that.
That's something that they, I would assume, went out of their way to kind of get that done as well for peace of mind and for their customers.
Exactly. Yeah.
And which is, it's just a safety thing. And it's kind of, again, a testament to what they're doing as a business, as a company, and getting the word out there about their product. But that's, I was unaware of that. I understood the fire resistant capabilities of their product because a lot of times we use that for fire blocking. And I've seen even at trade shows and stuff where they have the torch just sitting there on the Rockwool and nothing's happening.
Yeah.
But to see them kind of going to that length is pretty cool.
You know how many people try to touch that torch? It's silly.
Oh, I feel like everyone.
It's like, guys, it's a real flame.
Yeah.
It's real. Well, if you guys want to find out more, rockwool.com or on Instagram, rockwoolna. You can check out all of the content that they post. Right. Where it's like, a plumber or electrician, they have to go through this whole process in getting licensed and X amount of hours in order to get through a particular rank.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And even own their own business. I mean, we've talked about that before. The barrier to entry for this industry is low. Mm-hmm. And the reason that there's so much negativity around it is largely due to that.
Yeah.
Is due to the fact that quote unquote anyone can be a contractor.
Yeah. Yeah, and
anyone with a pickup truck and some tools can go and be a contractor.
Yeah, you go to Home Depot, buy yourself a tool belt, and you're a contractor. There it is.
Immediately.
What does the license that you have actually do for you?
It helps for insurance purposes. So, I have like a license number that I can insure my business with, and like I can show the homeowner, the client, like, here's my contractor's license. It's not like, Electrical Safety Authority where you need to have a permit for this. And you need to go to the ESA and you need to have an ESA number. It's very, very different than those legitimate. I'm not that I'm trying to call this not legitimate, but
no, but it's this. You have this like tiered system here where it's like you can be anyone with no license and get into this and just be a contractor.
Yeah.
Then you get the guys like you that spend 10 minutes getting a license, which let me peel back, and this is my take on it. Like, if you peel it back, like, it really doesn't do anything. Like, besides, like, the insurance side of it, maybe it gives you a discount on insurance and you can tell the client that you're licensed. But the sound of it is, again, anyone can get licensed. They just got to go take this 10-minute test. Yeah,
and now, like, when it comes to permits, it's my license on there. But
sure.
I think the problem here is, like, I have a friend who lives in Switzerland, and he's a licensed tile setter. We have, like, you look at a trade like tile setting, where here people are like, I'll just watch a YouTube video. I don't need to. It's
easy.
Anyone can do it. Anyone just like, okay, sure, anyone can tile, hypothetically. Right. However, you tile your bathroom, you have to look at it. You're the one that has to deal with that at the end of the day, or you have to deal with the pop tiles, the cracked grout. Because it's so, like you said, there's a low barrier to get into it. I just feel like that, like, lowers the standard a bit. Now, obviously, we're all proud to be contractors. We're proud to be in the trade, and I myself, I've dealt with it. Like, I was raised blue collar. Like, we grew up blue collar. There wasn't television until we were teenagers. So my dad was in the trades his entire life, and so being exposed to the other side of it, I've met a lot of people where you do get treated a bit differently when you're like, I'm a contractor versus I'm on TV, and I don't like that.
Yeah, I mean,
the one issue I don't know, to somewhat play devil's advocate, and where Nick is different in Boston, but in Jersey it's basically the same thing. There's no test, there's no verbal, there's no interview. You show proof of insurance and you file with the Division of Consumer Affairs, and you have a business registration as a contractor, as your license. If you get sued, if your business goes under, no questions asked, you can start another one with an LLC and pick up insurance and have a new business with no testing or anything like that. You just pay $70 a year or whatever it is. But say we were to implement more stringent, kind of a more stringent barrier to entry at this point, if we are facing, a lack of people in the trades, is that going to hurt us detrimentally? Like, it's almost like all hands on deck right now. Is now the time to implement that?
You have a really good point.
It's just tough because I've always been of that, where, like, I think that COVID and the pandemic really cleared out a lot of people who weren't cut out to make it, who are kind of flying by the seat of their pants. I do believe that. I think that a lot of people who are kind of just along for the ride weren't willing to stick it out through that, and at this point still aren't willing to. But I think, like, we need, rather than try and keep people out, we need to try and find ways to keep, retain the people who are here, attract new talent. And I do believe that there should be proper and adequate licensing. And maybe it should be like more so like near me, the plumbers and the electricians, right? You can have employees who work under your license, but your license is still at stake if they screw up. So it's a way to continually attract people, or like you don't necessarily need to be a licensed tile setter to set tile for us, but you will be working under the contractor who is a licensed, his business is licensed. Just to be able to retain who we have here and attract more people, because right now it's like, I don't know, do we put larger walls in front of us to kind of shun people from wanting to go this direction in the first place?
You have a great point. I mean, it reminds me of kind of like the debate about why it's so important to get permits. There's like a give and take there. We always preach like this is why you want to get permits, and then sometimes there's these walls that you need to climb to get permits. And people are like, well, why do I like? Is it really? Am I really? Is it going to be structurally compromised if I do this? Do I need to get an engineer involved? Do I need to spend this money? And it's like they have to jump these hurdles, and sometimes we lose people not getting permits to do that, and it's kind of the same concept what you're saying. I don't know what. I wish I had the perfect answer. Like I wish, because I think you're right. I think there's part of it that if we do make it harder to get into, those people that were on the fence already maybe won't get into the trades. However, like the pandemic, it did weed out those people who truly maybe weren't meant to be in it, weren't serious about it, were just doing it to collect a paycheck.
It's just tough because like I'm completely pro that argument, but right now I'm also like, let's try and attract whoever we can.
Yeah, no, you have a great point.
But it
is tough, and I've never really thought of it that way.
But you got to introduce the money side of it too. Like that's, we're asking people, hey, this is going to be harder to get into, to get licensed. It's a really tough industry, high stress. It's strenuous on your body. And by the way, it doesn't pay that well, and you're going to be beat up for every dollar that you try to charge.
Yeah, everyone's going to try and grind out every dollar that you try and make.
I'm listing off 3 things that would prevent me from getting into this industry, and there's a whole list behind that.
Yeah.
But the money is a real thing, and I say that I've been talking about this a lot recently, is that money is very easy to make now. Like there's a lot of and I mean that in the sense that there's a lot of different opportunities that you can make money. You can create financial freedom. You can create passive income. You can invest less time. It's not always about trading time for money. And I'm saying that to a group of people that are listening to this podcast that all likely trade their time for an hourly wage.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, that sounds enticing. Oh, I can work 4 hours a day and make more money than I am as a carpenter or a plumber. Yeah. I mean, you can. So the side of it is, the money does have to be, there has to be a correction there. Like people need to be paid a better wage to be in this industry, but that doesn't just come at the fact that, oh, well, I can go be an influencer and dance on TikTok and make more money doing this.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is you got to find the people that are genuinely interested in the trade.
Yeah.
Like there's a passion side of this, right? Like I really want to be a carpenter, but I also need to support my family. So I need to make a decent wage. And that, and I mean, we can go in so many different directions with that, but that's a big reason that we're not attracting people, is because, even when I'm interviewing people, it's like, well, what do you start at? It's like, well, I mean, if you're fresh out of high school and no experience, like I'll start you at $15 an hour.
Yeah. Here's minimum wage.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, and you come in, you're a rock star. Sure. Yeah. I'll bump you up, 18, 20, make up to $25 at being like that for like, and continue, and it can continue. And I have that conversation with everyone. It's like, listen, the scale is infinite. It's about the value that you can bring to the business, and I'll deal with the side of selling it. But
that's the I mean, and I know we've kind of spoken to this before, but the problem is that within our industry and residential construction, it's very hard to scale, and people aren't willing. When there's so many lower cost options in a price driven industry, it doesn't make sense for people to pay the overhead of a larger company if they don't find value in what we do as is. Like I was just in the paint store yesterday morning, and there's a guy in there, and he's got a lettered van. He's got on his business shirt, And another guy walks in. He's like, "Oh, you're not doing HVAC anymore." And he's like, "No, I was working in Philly. I got married. It wasn't working out. I realized in order to make what I could make on my own, I'd have to stay there until I was 60." And he was probably a little older than us. He was probably 40 or so. And he's like, "Yeah, so I just, I painted a bunch growing up with my dad and stuff. So I just started my painting company." And like, the fact that it is so easy to start that business, and that the path to a decent wage is to work for yourself, is only going to continually breed and perpetuate the small 1-2 man operations of, hey, the only viable path to making a decent living in this industry is to work for yourself.
Yeah.
It's tough, it's tough to find clients and the amount of work to be able to build a larger company in that middle scale of like, you're really small or you're really big. Like, I know that's a struggle for you, Nick, and that was, and you have to do a certain level of detail and work. I have a specific client you have to bring something else to the table. You're not going to compete with the guys who are doing everyday jobs. Like, you have to be hey, we're one of a handful of contractors who actually can do this type of work. And I think that a lot of people who are getting into this aren't willing to do that. Like, they just want to come in and make money.
Yeah. And I think, to your point before, like, you talked about weeding people out, and that the pandemic weeded people out who didn't want to be here. I think there's always the people that are passionate about it, no matter if that's construction, if that's a doctor, a teacher, they stand out and they're going to make a difference, and they're usually generally going to be more successful than the others. So, I think money talks, and, when we're looking at residential versus commercial, I know when I was in school, a lot of guys were coming there and they're saying, well, I want to get my carpentry level 1, 2, and 3, my beginners, intermediate, and advanced, because, at beginners, I'm getting, let's say, 25 an hour, intermediate's 35, and then advanced is 45 once I get my license. So there's an incentive there. There's an incentive, whereas in residential construction, I mean, if you're in a company that can support that financially and says, I'm going to give you a pay bump if you get this license, here's the incentive, then it's great. And there needs to be, I think, a better, within the business itself, better structure to support that. And I think a lot of businesses, I'm assuming like you guys, you probably have a good structure for that as well.
I think that Nick is looking to implement more of that, and really obviously treat his employees in a more respectable manner, and offer them competitive wages and benefits and all of that stuff. And I think that that's a testament to what he's doing, and also the type of employees and who he's attracting. Because if you have job prospects on the table, and a company is doing the type of work that you want to be doing, and also offering benefits and decent wages, it's a no-brainer that you would go that route.
Yeah.
But I think that, what Nick is doing is not, that's not the typical contractor.
No.
Especially in residential. Commercial is a different story.
Yeah.
You get into infrastructure, it's a different story. But with us, that's not, I mean, I think of it as, how many guys or girls do you know who are like a lifer at a residential construction company? Just worked their entire career there.
Quite
it just doesn't happen. But like,
well, I mean, depending on if we're talking like working up the ladder, or they're just like,
right.
I mean, just staying like, there's there just seems to always be a cap. Like, as your lifestyle grows and you need more, you're making changes, and a commercial company, I think it would happen far more often, because there you are able to work up, you are able to make more money, you are able to work into like a legitimate managerial position, where I think that with residential, everyone just outgrows that company and then either has a career change or starts their own business.
Yeah. I mean, we see that all the time. It's like you said before, the money generally isn't owning your own company and running your own crew. That's where you're going to be most successful. And that's why, you think about from, going back to students in getting into your profession. At a high school, at least, I mean, this was my experience. When I was in high school, a lot of people said, like the discussion was, what's going to make a lot of money? That's why everyone's like, I want to be a doctor. I want to be a lawyer. I want to be, at that age, you don't really know what you want to do, or there's very few people who know what they want to do. So you're talking about money, and then not a lot of people are thinking like, I want to go into construction because there's a lot of money. There's a ton of money to be made in construction. And when you see companies and people like yourselves, I follow Nick on Instagram, and, looking at and talking to people about why it's important to build a certain way, why it's important to use certain products. And this is what we've always preached, is that, if you want to sell higher paying jobs, you have to explain to the client, to the consumer, why they are going to spend more money. And, right. I've gotten into this with contractors before. Why are we using Schluter? Why are we using Dietra? We've been using chicken wire for 50 years. We've been doing this. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Well, there's a very important reason. There's the uncoupling membrane. There is a waterproofing aspect. Just explaining to the homeowners, to people, and this is what we try and do on the show as well, is like, okay, here's why you want to use superior products. One thing that's not talked about enough, I think, maybe on television, because it's to networks maybe not as sexy, is the money aspect. Like, this is X amount more, and this is. But what we always try and talk about is why you want to use better products. And I think from a contractor perspective, like, I see a lot more people now, since I've been in construction, now focusing on, a passive home, or, homes that are going to be built more energy efficiently, homes that are going to be built that are going to last the test of time versus, your standard subdivision home.
Right.
So, not that this is happening, but in your position, what would make you want to start your own business?
There's a part, like, I love building. Like, I truly, like, I mentioned this before, but when I was 14, I started in construction working for my dad. And he always used to say, he's like, come to the School of Homes. Just come work for me for the summer. And so I worked I didn't want to get into the trades myself. I wanted to be a firefighter. That was, at the age, that's what I wanted to do. And when I started working for him, I was like, man, I love this. And fast forward, God, a lot of years, fast forward a long time, being in the trades a long time. Now I'm like, I enjoy the television part, but what I enjoy most is building. I just finished a renovation at my wife's clinic. She owns a holistic health clinic in the Blue Mountain region in Ontario. And we renovated the upstairs during the last year. I probably started in January, did a one-man show, other than the, plumbing, electrical, stuff like that. And it just like, the cameras weren't around, and there was something that I was like, man, I just missed this, and doing stuff for social media is great, but I'm giving you a very long-winded answer to your question, is that, yeah, I do see opening my own company. There's definitely a lot of interest there. Sometimes,
but it would be more so to feed like your internal, and
right.
I say ego, but not in like a negative way, but that's something that you want for yourself to do. Something that, it's just within you that you want to try and tackle, whether it's a goal or to do something else. It's not because, hey, I want to make more money or this is more lucrative or anything like that.
Yeah. I mean, of course, like, the money's always like, I always want to be stable, and I always want to make sure I can take care of my family. But there's a drive, there's a passion there. I love to build. I love a challenge. And that's one thing about renovations. It's like, you truly, like, you never know what's behind the walls. And it's like, I love opening something up and thinking like, wow, I've never seen this before. How am I going to tackle this problem? And then, looking at new builds, thinking about, how can we do this better? So yeah, it really, it's about, for me, it comes back to passion. I'm like, everything I do in life, I'm an all or nothing type of guy. Like, if I am into it, I'm going to give it my all. If I'm not really into it, I'm just not going to do it.
I was listening to a podcast today, and it was interesting. I actually didn't finish it. I had a podcast to head off to, but they were talking about how, like, our generation, and I guess generation prior to us, but they're so fixated on trying to get people to choose, like, what job is the right fit for them, right? Like, what are you going to do when you grow up? And this guy's theory was kind of that there's many different people that could do different jobs and be successful, but there's all of these different, like, archetypes of people that could do multiple jobs, like would be successful in different disciplines of work. And that if we taught our generation or in school for these people to find out what type of person they are, rather than so, like, specific job oriented goals, because most people who start a job, whether it's right out of college or they pick a career path and they think they're going to like it, and then they don't, but they've invested all this time and this money and they've spent 10 years honing their craft. Now getting out of that is so much harder.
Yeah.
Where, like, they don't have this interdisciplinary skills to be able to go and do something else. So they stay in this kind of perpetual rut that they're in, and they're not happy with what they're doing, and they don't like their job. And you spend so much time of your job, of your life, working, that it breeds a lot of unhappiness and discontent within people. And if we kind of change the way that we raised our children and within schools to try and figure out, like, what type of people are good at what, and then not necessarily pick a specific job, that we would be breeding more successful people, because they would be able to bridge between different disciplines of work and be more successful and kind of build these skills that aren't necessarily specific to one job.
Yeah.
And I thought it was an interesting conversation.
So, first of all, I think you've hit the nail on the head. The friend of mine who's a tile setter in Switzerland, he was also telling me that in their schooling, and now I may butcher this, so don't take this verbatim, take this with a grain of salt. But he was saying at a young age, let's say 11 years old in school, they find out, they're like, are you a hands-on learner or are you more of a verbal, visual learner? And then they try and start to cater your learning towards that. And he was saying he was guided into the skilled trades because of that. And they have, like, you look at the construction industry in Switzerland, like, I mean, the homes there.
Just talking about this.
I was just there, and I got to tour a bunch of the job sites. I went to the carpentry school. I did a whole video on it, and it's funny the feedback I'm getting on the video, which YouTube is brutal.
Oh my god!
It's like you're such a moron. Like, we've been doing this for 100 years. I'm like, I know. I'm literally promoting the fact that you guys are doing it correctly.
But people are brutal, man. This is what
it is. It's like they get them at such a young age, and like you said, they cater the learning. Where it's like, you know, this was a similar conversation a couple of weeks ago when we talked about homeschooling, where it's like the schooling system is just, like, so structured. It's funny. I'm actually listening to the Dichotomy of Leadership with Jocko and Leif Babin, the book right now, and the chapter I just finished talked about how. I'm going off on a tangent.
I love it.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
It's our podcast.
That's right.
But he talked about SOPs. And this is, I related it a lot to school, and I also kind of related to what we're doing internally in the business. But how SOPs are not designed to be rigid, but also designed to be rigid. And what he goes on to explain is that it's primarily a suggestion. Like, there's times where you need to follow that to a T. But when the circumstance requires you to be flexible and adapt, you got to be flexible and adapt. When you got an enemy like shooting at you, but the SOP says that you got to stand on that front line, like, move.
Yeah.
Like, you got to know when to give and take. And I think my how I'm relating that to school is that I think that school has become so structured that flexibility never kicks in when it's like, hey, that kid doesn't really learn that way. It's like, yeah, but this is the way we're learning.
Yeah. No, first of all, I think we listen to a lot of the same podcasts sounding from like, as we go back and forth talking about egos, archetypes, and, but I agree completely. I mean, I look at, when I have kids, I talk about this with my wife all the time. I'm like, I don't see myself putting them in traditional schooling. It's like you said, they're like, okay, this is a one size fits all. Everyone just go this way, do what you're told. Like, well, what about learning about business? What about learning about taxes and mortgages, stocks? There's a lot of important things. I'm like, accounting. I'm like, holy shit, I've been like trying to.
The shit I'm learning like at 34 years old.
Yeah, same. I feel like I should have known the basics of this like a long time ago, but that's okay. I'll play catch up. Right. But it's, I do a lot of talks. I was doing more, obviously the pandemic kind of screwed that up, but at high schools. And one thing I always say is slow down to the students. I'm like, listen, I know you're having a ton of pressure right now. You're being told you need to find a school that you're going to spend a lot of money, and you need to find a career path that you're going to spend the rest of your life doing. And you're going to be paying off that debt for a long time, but you need to make that decision now. And then you have influence from your friends. You have influence from your family, from your peers, from your teachers. And I just don't see that as being that constructive. Like you said, like I have friends in high school that were like, oh, I want to be a police officer. And they'd go to police foundations and like, oh, shit, I hate this. Or, that go and get a degree in geography and end up doing nothing in that field. It's like, I feel like if we slowed down a bit, I think post-secondary education is brilliant, but it needs to be done properly. Like how many people do you guys know who are still paying off their student loans? Because I know quite a few in their 30s, in their 40s. And this is oftentimes something that they may not have even stuck with as a career. Or if they did, to your point, they're miserable. It's like we need to change. We need to throw all of this in a blender and mix it up. And what we're doing isn't working.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
It's fun. What you just said triggered, like, when you said we have to slow down. And I thought about in college. I remember, I forget what math class I went in, but I failed it miserably. Miserably, to the point where they said, all right, you need to go back to basic math 1.
Yeah.
Which was literally like division and multiplication. And I very much knew how to do that, and it was like kind of embarrassing at the time. But thinking about it now, it's like, well, I skipped steps, and it's because that school year was over. I never actually fully learned something. I was still in the process of learning it, but time was up, man. Like you got to go learn you got to go learn trigonometry. Can't even say that word. Trigonometry.
It was close. I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Trigonometry. And because we were pressed on time.
Yeah.
Instead, it's like everything we talk about now and it being on our own and in our own business and like learn, like we're not held to like, hey, you got to learn this by X date. Like, no, we just sit there and learn it until we figure it out.
Yeah. And then what happens when we rush things? 99% of the time.
Yeah, we end up owing $100,000 in taxes that we didn't learn about.
Exactly. I know. I talk about that all the time. Like me and my buddies in construction will talk about like, okay, when you're behind and you feel like I just need to rush this, like that's when I make my worst mistakes. Yeah. I don't know if you guys golf, but I'm not a very good golfer anyway, but I'm trying. But when I ever rush to go golfing, and if I'm like on a time crunch, guaranteed I'm losing like 12 balls that day. Like rushing anything in life never works out. And I know it's easier said than done, but like we really do need to take a step back, slow down a little bit, and think about reprioritizing things and think about the consequences that are going to come within our actions.
Yeah. Michael, what were you, when you, I think that Nick and I cut you off about your friend from Switzerland, the tile setter, you were going to get into something about kind of teaching or what they taught him in school. Do you remember what you were going to talk about?
I think I don't think there was too much more to say about it other than like they just cater it specifically to each kid versus trying to force everyone down one pathway of like, okay, well, oh, you can't learn math in this 3-month semester or whatever, how long this time is. Well, that's too bad. That's your fault. It's like, no, they're looking at the student and thinking, okay, well, clearly you learn differently. Like for me, I remember in carpentry, like I'm good at math, but sometimes I just don't absorb things at the same speed that other people. And I think that's, natural within anything we do. One of the guys, Ian, in my carpentry class, he had an accounting degree, a kinesiology degree, and he was a math whiz. Like, man, any formula the teacher threw out there, he just got it. So sometimes, they would throw something out and I was like, I'm not sure I understand. Can you explain this to me? And it would just take a different way of explaining something. And, I look at the education system, I think the same thing. I'm like, well, if a student is struggling, maybe we just need to try and explain it to them differently. Or maybe we just need to try a different approach versus trying to just say, this is the only approach. If you can't do it through this approach, then you're not successful or you're not smart enough.
So, I mean, that's an interesting thought. And I guess, our schooling and our entire educational system is not conducive to that. Like, you would have to restructure everything to be able to, hey, we're going to inventory these students and then place them into different kind of subsections that they, cater to the way that they learn. And that, like, at the end of the day, maybe that would require a little bit more upfront work, but I think that that would pay dividends to our students, where it's like, you don't necessarily need one-on-one, but even like a simple test as to who do you think you are? How do you think you learn? And then kind of getting classrooms or sections, groups of students to have a teacher or an instructor that teaches them in a way that they understand, rather than just like, it's random, you're getting this teacher.
So to bridge that, like, I'm having a lot of college memories right now, specific to the stuff I failed at.
Yeah.
But
that's usually how we learn best, right?
Yeah. Well, I actually didn't learn anything in physics, but I'm going to tell the story about physics because everything was book and lab. And you would, and at the end of the semester, like, I failed that course. Like, there was no doubt in my mind. And I ended up getting like a B+. And I was like, what the, like, how? And they ended up having to scale the entire class. Basically, no one passed on paper. So they scaled everyone up accordingly. And so everyone basically passed, right?
Right.
I can't explain that, how it worked. I just know I passed.
Yeah.
But my point is like, we're talking about different style of learning. But Michael, what you said is, stopping and asking the question, like, I don't quite understand that. Where it's like, when I was in the lab, I understood it. I understood what the exactly what was going on. I could do the formulas because I'm watching this thing, react in front of me. And then it was like, I'd go to the other side of the room and we'd have an open book test, like literally open book test. And I'd read I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, like zero idea, to the point where I'm like, I'm just going to hand this in blank because I don't get it. Where the bridge of that, where like, yeah, there could have been a whole group of kids that went in and only did labs and learned hands-on. But if I just had taken the opportunity to ask the question, or the teacher took the opportunity to understand I didn't get it written out of a book and kind of made that connection, like, hey, remember what you did in the lab? This means that, this means that. That's that bridge where it's like, it's not universal learning. It's you can cater to the student's needs, because I'm not going to be the only person in that class that doesn't understand it.
Exactly. And, whether it's ego, insecurity, but oftentimes we don't want to say, I don't understand. I don't get it, because we don't want to feel stupid. But like you said, you're not the only one who doesn't understand. And I think there's so much value in a good teacher. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I can think back of high school, college, and the good teachers stood out. Like, I look at my sister-in-law. She's a teacher. She teaches kindergarten, but she's so passionate with the kids. And I'm like, those kids want to be there with her, and those good teachers make a difference for the people who struggle. And then I think about my grade 10 math teacher. I'm like, I never went to class. Why didn't I go to class? I mean, there were a few reasons, but one of them was I did not like that teacher. I thought he was a complete dick. And he made the learning experience there was just no bridge there. Like there was no give and take. It was just, here's the work. If you don't understand it, that's kind of on you. Right. And I'm sure me being in grade 10, it's not all his fault. I guarantee you, I had a few issues on my own, but
it ends up I think a lot of times, even with that, it's like the enthusiasm and the engagement, and I don't know. It's a lot of times you get these newer teachers who are a couple years in and they're still excited, and that the prospect of learning is still there for them as well, and like they're truly inspired to be teaching this next generation. And I think that like a lot of those teachers were really good, and then you get the older ones who are on their way out, who are just so tired of like 10th grade kids.
Yeah.
That it's like, I don't know, you're just there and wasting time. And I think that if it were more rewarding for the student and the teacher, it would definitely cultivate a better learning environment.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to send Nick this. I found, so the guy who was on this podcast, he actually has his own podcast. It's called, let's see, he was a guest on this. But his podcast is called The Good Life Project. And he's the one who basically, Jonathan Fields, he came up with these like different spark types of people and what makes you tick. And he said a lot of times you have a primary spark type and then a secondary. And if even, if you have a business and you have your employees fill this out, and it'll kind of group them into what type of person they are, and like a primary and a secondary. And it helps people, as he say, like come alive by working within the spark type, where they're doing work that it may not necessarily be the specific task that they want to be doing, but it fits and molds with the like what makes them flow as a person. I'll send you the link to it. I know you can take like a test on it, and I also have
I'd love to check that out.
To an article on it. Like there's 10 of them, and it really does. It kind of digs into like what makes you get up in the morning and what makes you tick as a person. And it focuses less on the financial return, where like I feel like you said, Michael, we're picking careers based on what's going to make you money rather than like what fits with you as a person. Because it's every single person is different, and like we live in a culture where money drives so many decisions, and like the illusion that once you have money you're going to be happy, but like internally, innately as a human being, there's things that drive you more than that. Like it's just that we have this cultural mindset that that's what you need to chase, and that's the most important thing.
Totally. Like we need purpose. As as humans, we need purpose. We need to be doing something we're passionate about. I mean, I like I said before, I'm the type of person, and I recognize this within myself. I'm like, if I don't care about it, if I'm not passionate about it, I don't want to do it. And that can be good and bad. Maybe sometimes I should be more open, but when I am passionate about something, there's just like, it's fulfilling. You wake up in the morning,
and it's going to be easier to make money doing something that you're passionate about
100%.
Than not passionate about.
100%. And I think, going back to this whole school thing, like there's a problem with, the system, our school system, many systems, but we'll focus on our school system, the way we're teaching kids. And it's not just to say, teachers, you're bad. There's certain curriculum they have to follow. Like you said, there also needs to maybe be more incentive for teachers, because if you're dealing with, I did co-op when I was in high school. I'm like, hey, maybe I want to be a teacher. And I think I did at one point like grade 2 students, and I was like, holy shit, I have a newfound respect for grade 2 teachers, because these kids, like some of these kids are wild. Like, I don't know how you deal with this. So there needs to be an incentive to say, like, you've done this for, you've been here for 20 years. I understand that, you may not be as passionate, but like, if you do this differently, you get X reward. If you continue this passion, here's a reward. Like people are, I think, oddly simple in the way that if there is a reward, if like there's a bonus, if there's something in there for them, they're going to want to go the extra mile.
I'm thinking of kind of incentivizing what teachers are doing, and my head is going to, I'm like mathematically trying to figure out what they're getting paid like per hour per student, right? And like I'm just thinking of it on a very basic level as if what it costs you to have one of your children in daycare for like a
wildly
week,
different.
right?
Yeah.
And like what like, cause I mean, we're at like parent teacher conferences 2 weeks ago, and the teacher's like, you guys should be thanking me because I'm with your kids for more time each day than you are. And it's absolutely true.
They said
And
that?
yeah, I mean, it was like, it was,
Bold?
I mean,
Where's
it wasn't
my
like
thank
that.
you?
Yeah.
That wasn't just how it came out, you know,
Sure,
like there was a
yeah.
lot of levity to the conversation.
Okay.
But like, yeah, essentially, like I know how much of a pain in the ass my kids can be, and I wouldn't want to sit in a classroom with them and 20 some other students every day. And I'm like, teachers, if they're the primary caretakers of our children and our generation and teaching them how to become successful human beings, why are we not paying them leaps and bounds more than we are? Like, and then that's where my mind goes, where it's like, well, how much would it cost you? It costs you $150 to send your kid to like daycare for one day. And then like what a teacher's making on a yearly salary probably isn't that much more than that. And that's for like one student. Now you gave them 25 additional students. Like they're just getting taken advantage of completely and utterly, just taken advantage of.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've heard this. I don't know firsthand, but I've heard in the States, you know, it's worse for teachers than in Canada, pay wise. I don't know the numbers offhand, but even in Canada, like there's strikes and, you know, there's politicians that are like, the teachers make too much money. But I'm like, okay, well, these are, you know, to your point, the people watching our kids,
Right.
you know, when we're at work, they're watching our kids, they're teaching our kids, and they're prepping them for the future. You want the right person doing that, you know, and if there's proper training set in place and, you know, they've gone to school to do that, okay, there's one step. But then if it's not incentivized further than that, then, you know, how long does that last?
Right.
I just did some quick math, and it's like if you had students that were like 25 in a classroom, teachers are getting paid like $1.50 an hour per student.
Oh my God.
Which is just
It's like piecework.
insane. Yeah. And like they're responsible for that whole like next generation.
Right.
That's wild. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. Like everything we keep talking about comes back to money here, and there's so many like the building industry. There's so many different ways to fix or help correct the issue, and it's like, you know, part of me wanted to kind of go down this path of, well, there's, you know, you can be a carpenter, but there's other ways you can supplement your income, which there is. Like there's things that you can do that are above and beyond. Like, you know, firsthand, you could be a contractor and be in television, and then utilize a television career to leverage brand deals and to leverage product and like there's opportunity to leverage that. Now, what about the regular guy that just goes to work every day as a carpenter? It's like, well, you have a skill that people would like to learn. You could dedicate 4 hours of your week to teach someone, whether that's firsthand, whether that's on a video, whether that's writing a blog, whether that's submitting to Fine Home Building. Like there's always opportunity, and that's going back to something I said earlier. Like it's actually quite easy to make money. I'm not saying to make enormous amount of money, but it's quite easy to make money. You solve a problem, you can get paid for it.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I think oftentimes now, you know, we look at people online, you know, we'll say TikTok. I have TikTok. I never go on there. I don't post on there because I'm just like, there's part of me that I'm like, you're a 33-year-old man. What the hell are you doing on TikTok? And then there's another part of me that, there's another part of me
You're
that's
35.
Like, I'm 36, but I just draw the line with TikTok. That's the line.
Guys, I'm right in between you, and I'm on TikTok.
I know.
Yeah,
and I know it comes from ego. There's an ego part involved in this, but I'm also like, there's another part of me that I'm like, there's opportunity there.
Right.
And with anything, we can make excuses. We can say, I'm too busy. I'm too busy to work out. I don't have time. Well, get up an hour earlier. Right. You know, I don't have time to come up with a post. Well, get off your phone, stop scrolling. Or, you know, if you prioritize, you can make time for anything. You just have to have the drive to do it. And so many people, people will say, you know, you're lucky to have a platform, or you're lucky to be on TV. But, you know, nowadays anyone can have a platform. You just have to want it. You have to understand that there's a supply and demand, and that people want to learn. And like you said, you know, people want to learn something, whether that's through a video, through a picture, through a caption, through a dance. People want to learn. And if you are able to create that, then there's your audience. And it is easier, I think, now more than ever to make money. However, that market is also saturated.
It is, and I knew we were going to go there, but it's like, okay, well, CVS puts a pharmacy on one corner. You think Walgreens is like, oh, you know, it looks like they already have a pharmacy here, so we'll find somewhere else. It's like, no, they're like, all right, buy that other corner. Put in a Walgreens across the street.
Yeah, no, you're so right.
And it's like, you know, a couple of my friends are into this whole like Amazon, you know, buying product and selling it, like buying it from Alibaba, whatever, and turning around and selling. It's like, it's, you know, when you really think about it and like the whole process, it's relatively simple to get that set up. And yeah, it might be a grind for 6, 9, 12 months, and you might not make any money, but you do it right, you can make really good money with it.
Yeah.
And there's tens of thousands of people selling iPhone chargers on Amazon.
Yeah.
It's saturated. But you do it right, like maybe you reposition and you become the number one seller.
Yeah.
Like there's ways to get attention, there's ways to supplement your income. And so that's one side of it, but the other side of it is that, you know, and this isn't something I can speak to because I'm not an economics guy. I don't have a great understanding beyond basic knowledge of economics, but it's like the other side of it is everything is becoming more expensive.
Yeah. And,
you know, and it's like, I mean, we just bought 2 vans for the millwork company, and I'm in the dealership and we're chatting, and, you know, they had like a G-Wagon in the dealership and inside the dealer. And I was like, oh, you guys said that you had a hard time getting the G-Wagons. He's like, dude, we got 3 of them last week. They all sold for almost $100 over sticker. And my point is like, okay, like there's something that's becoming wildly expensive. That's a $300,000 SUV at that point, right? And it's like there's still a demand for it, but the problem is like everything is trending this way where like now stuff is being overpriced. You know, everything is becoming more expensive, and we're not counteracting it with the teachers, with particular trades that aren't being paid enough, because then you go to the selling side. It's like, because we can't sell it at a high enough price.
Yeah.
And it's like it's just this like vortex of like all of these issues and everyone trying to fix everything, and that's where it's like, I just got a software update in the middle of my podcast.
Everything looks good on my end.
There we go. Yeah. All right, we're good. But it's like this is where it becomes overwhelming, and these conversations can be overwhelming in the sense like, what issue are we trying to fix?
Yeah.
You know, where it's like the skill. We go back to the original conversation of skilled trades and the fact that, you know, there's this stigma around it. It's like, okay, if that's like we're all dedicated to trying to fix that stigma. And, you know, but when you peel back the issues with it, it's like there's so many issues with it. It's the pay. It's the fact that our parents told us to go to college. It's the fact I'm in college debt. It's the fact that I can only make $30 an hour, and that I'll never be able to afford the life beyond that I have today. And it's like, and all of these things, and it's like, you know, someone's listening to this podcast right now saying, you know what, man, like, yeah, okay, I could go and teach someone what I want to do, but I bust my ass for 50 hours a week. I'm tired. I got 3 kids. I'm home. The last thing I want to do is open up TikTok and teach someone how to cope a piece of baseboard.
Yeah.
But that's the reality of it. And yes, like when we look at it for face value, yeah, the discipline isn't there for that person, and that's their excuse. But that's a good excuse.
Yeah.
you know?
No, you're
But
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Like, I look at it and I try to describe, like, I know I could be much more present on social media, but I describe to people, I'm like, listen, I've got a cup. I've got my cup. This is full of water. And if I take that and I pour half into my job, then I pour, an eighth into my fitness and my health. Then I pour, I'd probably say a half into my wife and my family. But you know what I mean? I start to
I
distribute
was like,
that.
let's make sure this doesn't get back to his wife.
Yeah. She knows that I prioritize her. But my
Yeah.
point is like, you only have so much to
Right.
pour from your cup until you start to get that cup filled back up. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's easy to say that you can always find time, but sometimes you're burnt out. You can't, you need that time to recover. You need that time. For me, I'm like, I don't want to make a post. I don't want to do that extra right now because I need to take that time and energy and invest that in my home life or, whatever it might be. So yeah, it's sure we're sitting here talking about like money's easier now than ever to make. However, life's also not so easy and so simple. You might have kids, you might have issues at home, you might have issues with your job, family. Like there are so many variables.
Right.
There's not one formula that fits it all. There's just, we have options and then we have to figure out, okay, where's best to invest our energy.
I mean, I also think that comes down to like the balance conversation, and that it shouldn't just be about making money. Like I think that those efforts need to be spread out to multiple different categories, and it can't just be work, it can't just be family, it can't just be self-care. I think that you need to touch on all of them, and I don't think that like that balance necessarily needs to be equal portions all the time, or it's always 75% going towards work. I think that oftentimes like we look at that balance and it's this very finite window that we're looking at, where it's like, hey, every day I have 14 hours, 16 hours, or whatever it is, and I'm going to devote 8 to work, 10 to work. And like, it's easy to look at it on a day-to-day basis, but I think what we really need to do is kind of step back and look at that over a year, over 5 years, over 10 years, where like sometimes you're driving harder. Sometimes you're peeling back from work and you're focusing more on your family. Sometimes it's like a month of just self-care, whatever it may be. And I think that balance, between making money, being self-sufficient, taking care of your family, taking care of your own needs, I think that we need to look at that on a larger scale, because it's not just day to day. You can't create that same glass every single day and expect to devote that time daily the same way. I think that we need to step back some and look at a larger picture of that.
I love that. I think that's so well said. I mean, looking at any of it, like, is this sustainable? Like you said, there's going to be time we're grinding at work. There's going to be time that effort and energy is going into self-care or at home, whatever it might be. We have to understand that there's going to be times you're like, hey, I'm in great shape right now. Like, I don't know about you guys. Well, I can tell you guys, you look fit from here. So it's like, when you're in the gym, there's times you're giving it in the gym and you're like, I'm in the best shape of my life. And there's times you're like, I just can't find the energy to do that, you know? And it's like, it waxes and wanes. It's finding, and I think being okay with that flow as well, and understanding that there's like a reason, why, I was able to invest this energy and this time in that before, but now this is taking priority.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of times we kind of harp on ourselves for when we look at our balance on a day-to-day basis, where it's so easy to get down on yourself, where you spent X amount of more time in the gym than you wanted to today, and you could have spent that with your family, or you spent this day with your family when you should have been doing paperwork, or you stayed late on the job when you should have been with your family, but that's all you're looking at one timestamp in this entire movie, right? And you need to, I don't think that we need to necessarily be as hard on ourselves with this whole balance thing, being self-employed, working in construction as we are, because like you said, a huge thing is sustainability. And I think that if you are in an imbalance, you won't be able to sustain. You won't be able to sustain marriage, family life, health, business, whatever it may be. And that's long-term sustainability. That's not, can you sustain for today? Because you can sustain anything for a day.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Honestly, until I started dating my wife, I didn't get that. I was just work. I was like work and work out. I'm like that's all I did. Yeah. And she was like, "What do you do for pleasure?" I'm like, "Well, work." Like it's just like, and that's just
Other
how I
than
was.
Work.
Yeah.
Oh, I work out too.
Yeah. It's like, okay, well, hold on. I think we have found a problem here. And I love what you said, because it's like, it's a holistic point of view. You have to look at life as a whole. It's like finding the time to put a little bit extra here, a little bit of extra there. And it's not so simple as in like, oh, here, 20% relationship, 20% fitness. Like it's gonna change. That balance is going to change. And it's like, we do need to be easy on ourselves, because holy shit, I don't know if I'm the only one here, but it's like, you're constantly like, I could have done better today.
No,
I could have done more.
Of course you're not the only one.
Yeah, I figured as
I know,
much.
rhetorical.
Yeah,
right?
it's a rhetorical question or statement.
But I think this relates. It's odd. It relates back to that the standard operating procedures, the SOPs, where it's like, you're gonna create some structure in your life. Like, hey, I'm gonna dedicate this much time to myself, my family, and my business. Like, let's just use those top three. That's what I've always looked at it that way. And for order, and that's the order of importance in my world, where it's like, I come first. Like, I love my family dearly, but without me, I'm not there for my family. And my family's second, and my business is third. And what that means is that I need my time. Like, yes, I'm gonna go to the gym, but with the relationship back to the SOPs, it's like,
see that vein poking out right now.
Oh, I've been watching that, man. I need to get some more.
Did arms this morning? Big
very
pump?
vascular today.
Yeah.
You're making me blush. But it's like, but the same goes with like, all right, but you have to still be flexible. When something else calls your attention, like, hey, listen, like, get your workout in, but you're gonna have to like speed it up and maybe only be there for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Because you get something at work, or you gotta be at your kid's school, or whatever it is, right? Where it's like, and the important part of what you both just said is being okay with it. Because oftentimes we're not.
Yeah.
And that's, at least speaking for myself, like, that's where I have mental breakdowns where it's like, I get so worked up about stupid shit. Where it's like, why did I eat that candy?
Dude, but that's the same exact thing. It's sustainability and balance.
Totally.
Where like, you look at your week of diet, right? And it's not because you ate like one cheeseburger and French fries. When you look at
cheeseburgers are bad for you?
Ate,
Yeah,
I mean, they're all right, but like,
they're pretty high up on my
look at the candy of one day and then like beat yourself up because you ate candy, where it's like, the rest of the week I didn't have candy, So
No,
like, your body as a whole.
100% right. And it's like, and that's the mental aspect of all of this business, right? Where it's like, we fail at business, we fail on a job, we lose money, we lose a client, we lose an employee, we screw something up, like, we beat ourselves up over it to the point, like, we've talked about this a lot, to the point where a bad client will get all of your attention when you have 5 other clients over here that like fucking love you.
Yep.
And they're not getting any of your attention because the guy over here is barking and telling you he's going to sue you and that you suck and you don't know how to run a business. It's like, stop and I went through this and I had to stop, literally like step back and be like, what am I doing? This guy is getting this. There is no good end result with this guy.
Yeah.
I need to take it for what it is, understand what I can control, walk away from what I can't control, and put my energy into the people that deserve my energy.
100%.
And it's hard. Like, it's the mental side of it, and that's where like we consistently trip up on. Where it's like, when you're so hard on yourself. I don't know, how did we get down this?
I don't know. I love it though. We're solving all of the world's issues right now, and I'm into it.
Yeah.
I also think, Nick, like, to go deeper into that, it's like we see a world that's created, and like a narrative that's written that you're not supposed to have bad customers, and that every
Right.
job's supposed to be amazing, and that you're not supposed to screw up, and you're supposed to be happy all the time.
Yeah.
And like that's just not the case. So learning to be okay with that, like nobody's going to be happy that you have a shitty client or that a job's gone wrong or that like life isn't good right now, but that's just part of life, and that's just part of being in business, and that's very normal, even though people do not normalize that.
Totally. And that, like, you look at social media as a whole. I always say it's the best of. That's what people aren't posting. Like, like I had a shitty sleep and I really had to put it on today to just get through today. No one's saying, like, mainly because, well, anyway, no one's talking about the actual or all of the shit that you have to deal with in life. And so it perpetuates that idea that we need to be perfect. We can't have that piece of candy. We can't have that, those extra fries. We can't have a bad client.
Fries are bad?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it depends
Only
on what
when
kind of
they're
old. Yeah, exactly. I did make fries. I baked them though, but I think there's a beauty in learning from your mistakes. There's a beauty in stepping back and saying, what just happened, pardon my language, fucking sucked.
Right.
However, there's something in this that's a takeaway that I need to learn from. Like my dad always says to me, he's like, you learn best when you bang your head. And I'm 6'4", so I've banged my head many times. That's why I stumble with my words sometimes. But I remember, like, it's like you walk down a set of stairs into a small basement, you smash your head, you don't do that again. And it's like the same thing in life. You have a bad client. There's a takeaway there. Like, okay, why do I have this bad client? Is it, Nick, to your point, because you're giving him so much attention that it perpetuates? It's like making it okay for him to behave and act this way. And it's like, it goes back to, like you said, being able to deal with what you can control and just letting go of the rest.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can't have any of those good clients and good experience with clients if you don't have those bad experience. I have this damn fly that's flying around my face this whole time that's driving me nuts.
Oh, you're pulling it off. It doesn't seem that way.
It just like keeps flying around me.
Yeah.
But I think that, as far as finding that balance and finding happiness and finding being a successful human being a successful business owner, it's not all great all the time. Like all of those difficult lessons are what shape and mold you oftentimes. Like I think that a lot of times the losses are far more important than the wins.
Yeah,
because that's when you truly build character.
Yeah, and being able to get back up and keep going. Like, receiving and seeing adversity is oftentimes a good thing. Like I look at life and I'll refer back to my wife a million times because I love her to death, but she's honestly like the smartest person. She's wise beyond her years and she's taught me so much. But she always has said to me, I've known her for over almost half my life now, and she always says everything happens for a reason. And now I truly believe that. And I'm not saying, I'm not getting too deep here, but it's like, if this happened, I'm like, why did this happen? And what's my takeaway? There's a lesson in everything. And sometimes if one door closes, oftentimes, the old saying, another opens. And it's like, maybe this door closed and this thing happened because this other opportunity is a better opportunity.
It's funny, like, you can look at anything in your life, and we're getting a little cliche, but like,
yeah, we are. That was my bad.
No, it's fine. But it, like, when you think about it, it's like my wife and I have met in a very funny way. But when people are ask me a lot, like, hey, do you regret going to college, for example? I'm like, no, I don't really regret it because like there was a series of events that included college that led me to the life I have. I didn't meet my wife in college, but I met my wife after college due to a job I got because I went to college. And, would I have met her otherwise? Probably not. And when you sit there and like, you can go through your entire existence on Earth and like relate it back to every event that you ever like actually experienced, right?
Yeah.
And the bad times are something that we oftentimes we victimize ourselves. It's like, why is this happening to me? Like, this shouldn't be happening. It's like, but when you reposition your thought there and like, all right, this did happen, and you immediately go into like, what could I have done to prevent it? Like, was there something I did that could have prevented me from feeling this pain?
Yeah.
And, and that could be a good exercise, or you just take it for, hey, I'm feeling this pain. This sucks. But, ultimately, like, I got tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I got the next day, and I got tens of thousands of days in front of me, to my knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. Versus, there's the victim mentality, and then there's, being empowered by some of the shitty things that just happened and saying, okay, well, I got another shot at this, or I have another opportunity to make this better, or I learned from this and I can do this differently if this happens again.
You know what sucks, though, is like we're sitting here and we're all probably doing pretty good with everything that's going on in our life in this very moment. And we're saying this and someone's listening to this and they're not doing so well.
Yeah.
And they're like, you know what, screw you guys. Like, yeah, I'm going through hell. And you're telling me that this is just what was supposed to happen and I'll get through it and my life will continue. Like, and obviously, like, that's what we hope, like, that you'll power through this.
Yeah.
Like we've talked about, and we don't talk about it enough in our industry, but we've talked about suicide on the podcast and like how that's a real thing. Stress gets to people in very serious ways and everyone's different. And like, that's, I would like to think an extreme example, but, and I guess I just want to call attention to the fact that we're sitting here talking about something that's not currently active in our life, based on like a conversation right now. Like we're all in pretty good spirits. I don't think we're going through something as traumatic, but people are. And without getting to the point where it's like I sound like a shrink or I'm trying to be cliche, but it's like the reality is like yes, it sucks. Like there are these situations that you cannot control, even though you could have done things to prevent them or change the course of those actions. What has happened to you is what it is.
Yeah.
And I as much as I hate that saying, like, that's what you're faced with in this very moment. So how you have to look beyond that and like you said, focus on what you can actually control.
Yeah. I mean, listen, talking about suicide and mental health, it's like, it's something, for me, I love talking about mental health because, again, it's not something that we talk about on social media. I've done a lot. I've done years of therapy. I've done years of, I've been in very dark places in my life. As a family, we've gone from bankruptcy to where we are today. You know what I mean? Like we've gone through a lot, and I'm saying this because it's like, it's easy to look at us three and say, oh, these guys are happy, they're doing okay, but the journey getting here doesn't mean that, like, we haven't had days where it's like, fuck, how am I going to get through this? And it's just finding whatever it is to get through that, finding the motivation, finding like, this person needs me, or I need to get through this, and I need to find a way to get through this. It's not easy. I know I lost one of my childhood best friends to suicide in the last year, and it's mental health is real, man. And I just think, as men in the trades, the more we talk about it, the more it's like, at least people won't feel alone, because like you said, sitting here saying, hey, it's just easy, do this and this is the outcome. It's like, well, also there is a darker side to it.
And I think that everyone is not going to be happy all the time. I know, Nick, we had spoken about this maybe a little over a year ago, but like, to be happy is just a fleeting emotion where, like, nobody's happy all the time. There's people who have a genetic predisposition to being more happy than other people. Like some people just have a melancholy personality, and to sit there and compare yourself to what you see online or what you listen to on a podcast or what you kind of project the three of us are going through is silly, because although you may be fine today, like there's a guarantee that our lives will get shitty again, and then they'll get better again, and then they'll get shitty again. But you're not going to be in this kind of stasis where you're happy all the time or you're sad all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, learning to accept that and learning to understand that, like, every day that you have and kind of the right now is as good as it gets. Like what you have right now, and if it's family, if it's health, if it's just being able to wake up and, you know, send your kids on the bus, whatever it is, that like you don't have to look for the future for that happiness. There's a lot of things to be grateful for and to have that gratitude on a daily basis. You just need to learn to acknowledge that, because I don't know about you guys, but I think that oftentimes I miss happiness in the moment, where like you look back on it, you look back on a vacation or a weekend or something that you did with your kids, and after the fact you realize like, yeah, I was really happy then. But like in it, you don't realize it. And I think that that's something that we all need to do a better job focusing on, that we are all experiencing these kind of ebbs and flows of happiness on a daily basis. And just like your job, Nick, a lot of times the negative overrides the positive, but we shouldn't be waiting until the past to kind of appreciate how happy we are in the moment, which I think that a lot of us probably do.
Oh yeah, I'm guilty for that. I mean, you know, trying to become present and stay present is, I mean, I think it's a lifelong journey. It's like it's a practice versus just, you know, a way to be. But I think finding happiness or finding inner mental peace is the key to that, is being present. You know, sometimes you lie there in bed at night and you think about, I'm like, okay, how am I going to start my herringbone pattern, or, you know, how am I going to frame this, or, you know, whatever it might be. I'm like, I do my best thinking about job sites at night, but that is not so good for, you know, maybe my mental health or my getting a proper sleep. So it's like trying to stay present, easier said than done. Whether, you know, if you find, you know, you're able to stay present through exercise, through meditation, through MMA, whatever your tool might be. It's like there is a tool out there for you, and it's just like that. If you're going through it, staying present is, I think, the best way to try and get through it.
It is. You oftentimes project stuff in the future and then like dwell on shit in the past.
Yeah.
And you're so worried about whether it's past mistakes or past regrets, which I do believe it's good to acknowledge them and to learn from them. But then oftentimes you're taking them and you're projecting what may or may not happen in the future, and you just lose sight of everything that's happening right in front of you.
Yeah.
And like, you don't have kids, right, Michael?
No, not yet.
Okay, so
not yet.
Like, I have 2, Nick has 3, and all the time I tell myself this when we're in the car with them, taking whatever sort of road trip, whether it's an hour, 3.5 hours, 6 hours, I want to pull my fucking hair out. Like, I just can't wait to be done the road trip. But like, those are some of the most memorable family experiences that I have after the fact. And like, as miserable as it seems, I'm like, I'm actually happy. Like, this is happy. These are memories right now. Like, all of this headache and what we're laughing about. And like, you know, our youngest being a pain in the ass or fighting over it, whatever it may be, in hindsight, it was like, that was actually really fun. And it's a perfect example of just focusing on things that aren't important and losing sight of like the happiness that's actually happening all around you.
Yeah. Well, if you're living in your head and constantly, you know, reliving, you know, whether it's past trauma or you're stressing about future events that are going to come, it's like, you're going to miss what's in front of you. You're going to miss that opportunity or that happy moment that maybe you should have been a part of, versus, you know, being kind of there.
like Nick, you were just on vacation for 2 weeks with your family.
Yeah.
Do you feel you were able to remain present throughout that and like really take that in and enjoy that?
Honestly, yes.
Good.
Good for you, man. Good for you.
And it's weird for me to say that, because I didn't go into it thinking I would be able to.
Yeah.
But and I can't remember if I've brought this up on the podcast. So forgive me if I did, but you know, it's something I go through with my kids at night, specific to bedtime and reading them a book. And Meg was watching this documentary one night, and it was about a kid that like died in his sleep, like a child, like a 4-year-old or something like that. And because I can't stand the shit she watches, but this is the shit she watches. And I remember the dad interviewing, and he's sitting there in front of the camera, and he's like, "Yep, I woke up, I went down to the exercise room, I hopped on my Peloton, I got a nice workout in, and then off to work I went, and unbeknownst to me, my kid was dead upstairs. And all I can think about was the fact that he asked me if I could read him one more bedtime story. I'm literally getting choked up saying this. Jesus. And I said no. And I think about that every single night. My kid's like, will you read another book? And like, part of me wants to say no. Mm-hmm. Like, I kind of want to just go sit down on the couch and watch TV with your mom. Mm-hmm. But the other part of me is like, I don't know. It's very weird. Like Ken, who's my partner in the millwork company, like we were talking about death and how weird it is, and this is a prime example of it, of how like that is the reason why I read another book, because I have no fucking idea if I'm gonna live tomorrow. My kid, like that's scary, and that is, and to talk about the like living in the present. You know, being able to go away for 2 weeks and be with my kids, and like, yeah, they drove me crazy. And like, there were times where I'd probably argue like, no, don't do that. But like, you know, what am I fighting for? Mm-hmm. It's like, you know, I'm not changing the course of their life. I just don't want them to get fucking yogurt on the couch, because then I got to pay for it because it's an Airbnb. Yeah. You know, yeah. But it's like, when I look back, it's like, no, like I had fun. I have found the ability to balance work and life. I don't think that it will. I'm just like, I'm clear. Like I'm never gonna have issues with balance. Like right now, I think I've been able to do a really good job with that. Mm-hmm. You know, I want to go back to something, and so an hour before this podcast, a friend of mine, who I thought a friend of mine, texted me, but it was his wife, and she had texted me to let me know that. My friend passed away.
Fuck. Sorry for your loss, man.
I appreciate that. My point in telling you this is I had caught up with him a couple weeks ago, and he was so happy. So happy. He got sick, had cancer. So happy. His marriage was better than it's ever been. His life, he just like he went back to work. He was enjoying work. He was enjoying life. He was just so happy. And I had asked him, I'm like, do you think this like will kill you? He's like, absolutely not.
Like, I'm Todd.
It is, yeah.
Sorry.
And I was like, when he said that, I was like, I wonder if he believes it. Mm. And whether or not he did, I wasn't going to question that. Whether or not he did, he had chosen to be in the moment and truly appreciate what he had, and the marriage he had, and the relationships he had, and the friendships he had. And the fact that it got to the point of like, hey, your life now has an expiration date, you know, and his mind changed then, right? And I'm not really sure why I'm sharing this beyond the fact that like we're talking about how we take for granted all of the opportunities that we have to be happy, and we oftentimes reflect on them when it's too late, when the reality is it's, you know, you don't know when that time is up. Yeah. And you know, the fact of being happy or being sad or being mad, those are choices that we make. We choose to be happy about something. Mm-hmm. We choose to be sad about something. We as humans make the decision that something is sad. And I heard this on a podcast recently. It was like, you know, they were actually talking about death. And they were talking about how we decided that death is sad. Mm-hmm. If you go way back, you know, death was just a thing that happened.
Part of life.
Mm-hmm. Like, you know, no one grieved. It was like, yeah, like, of course you have relationships and love and emotion and all that. But like, we decided that now it's like, we're supposed to be sad. We're supposed to grieve. We're supposed to cry. Mm-hmm. Like, that was a decision that we made. And it's the same thing with being happy. Mm-hmm. It's like, we're making a choice to be happy about certain things.
Yeah.
Oh, we got a great job. Let's be happy about it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that we don't celebrate the wins and grieve the losses, but it's, you know, we're in more control of these emotions and the opportunities that we're presented than I think that we give credit to.
Yeah. There's a whole argument that we are like the least happy the human race has ever been now with
by
everything
choice.
that we have. I mean, it's by choice, but it's also because we do not accept or think about death as much as we should. And like, because it's something that we don't have answers to and it scares us. So like, we just put it out of sight, out of mind. And I forget the country, but there's a country that like part of their national like identity is to accept and celebrate death. And like, one thing that they encourage all of the nation to do is every single day to think about death, like specifically 3 times a day, like when you're leaving the house to think about it. And it creates this gratitude within your life where you're constantly thinking that, like, an understanding, not being afraid of, but understanding that life is finite. Mm-hmm. And that like the little shit that you're dwelling over, or the decisions that you're bypassing, the experiences that you're choosing to let go, the people that you're cutting out of your life, like if you were to actually be in touch with your mortality and fatality, that like you would make a lot of different decisions and probably be a lot happier. But it's the fact that as a culture, it's like taboo to talk about it.
Yeah.
And that it you know, as a race, it's some of the, we now have some of the most unhappy medicated people that we ever have. And a lot of it is in part due to that.
Yeah. You know, my sister on her arm has a tattoo, and it's something my dad has said since we were kids, and happiness is a choice. And, you know, Nick, like you said exactly that. Happiness is a choice. And it's not as simple as like turning a light switch on or off, but we choose to put our energy into whatever we choose, whether it's like, I had a shit day. Sure, you can have a shit day, but if you dwell on the fact that you had a bad day, you're going to have a bad day and you're not getting out of that. You know, we choose what we invest our energy into. And now, obviously, there's much deeper things to be said about that. But, you know, it's Tyler, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. To your point, that we're the unhappiest we've ever been. You know, I look at death as being a part of life. Especially, and I was reminded of that when my buddy committed suicide. You always think you have more time. You think like, I'll talk to him tomorrow. I'll catch up with them then, or, you know, I'll have that extra moment, that nice moment with my wife or my family, whatever it might be, tomorrow. Tomorrow it's not always there. You know what I mean? Like all that's there is right now. And I think we forget that. And when something like death happens, I think obviously you grieve. It is a sad part of life, but there's a lot of growth to be had there too. You know, if there's a forest fire, for example, and we're getting into something maybe a bit corny here, but that allows new growth. You know, when a tree dies, that allows growth of another tree. And so when, like for me, when I lost my buddy, I was like, it made me realize just how fickle life was. And I'm like, man, I really need to appreciate these moments. And having this conversation now, I'm like, it just reinstills that even further and deeper. It's like those moments that really matter with the people that really matter. And it's like being present for those moments. That's what matters.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that we've definitely done. It's a shame because I think culturally we've done a really bad job of kind of advocating for what brings happiness and what success is and everything else. And I think that we've all tried to mimic that to a certain extent. And, you know, ego has kind of taken control, and that's who we strive to portray ourselves as. Where I think that if we stressed, you know, what was really important in our lives and kind of shifted our focus some and just adopted more gratitude on a day-to-day basis, it's like somebody gets terminally ill and all of a sudden, like, they have a far greater gratitude for life because they understand the finality of it. Where, like, the reality of that is we're all in that same boat. Like, we just may not have the understand when that termination is kind of coming up, but nobody's going to live forever. And, you know, the clock is always winding down, and we're no different than anyone else who kind of has that. It's just that those people who find out, you know, this is how long I have left, are able to kind of quantify that and create a greater gratitude for that. That being said, it's still like my worst nightmare.
Yeah, and like, how much does that suck?
Yeah.
The fact that, like, until we know, we're unable to, like, to have gratitude towards everything that we have in the very moment.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know,
You think you need more.
Right.
Oh my God.
And it's that constant balance, and it's like I don't necessarily, like, you know, I feel weird connecting this, but like Vaynerchuk, you know, says this constantly, and people ask, like, what's one piece of advice you could give me, and he says it. He's like, you're gonna die, and people laugh immediately. He's like, no, seriously, like, what, like, you're gonna die, so be the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
Like, be happy, spread kindness, like. And do the things that are more important than trying to figure out how to make it, you know, $1 million a year.
It's so true. So true. Because you know how many wealthy people I know that are miserable, that are in relationships. Like, I'm sure you guys could say the same thing. You know, you know these people with lots of money. It's like, okay, they've made it.
Right.
Are they happy? No. It's like, that's not the answer.
No, it's not. And you know, and I don't want to contradict anything I've said in the past. Like, listen, I want to make millions of dollars.
For sure.
Like,
For sure.
No doubt. Like, there's part of me that's always going to be focused on that. But the careful balance of being happy.
Well, yeah, you don't want to.
And not exchanging happiness for wealth.
You don't want to miss the ride, you know, on your way to the destination. You know, it's not like, okay, I've made $1 million. What the hell did I do for the past?
Right.
You know.
Where it's like, you know, being able to afford to take my family away for 2 weeks, like, that was something I wanted since I started my business. And looking back, you know, and seeing me be able to accomplish that and actually be able to enjoy it, that was amazing. Good, like, that was huge for me.
You should be really proud of yourself. That's you know, I know so many people who are like, they grind, they establish and do something really big for themselves, but they don't take that time. So you should be proud of yourself that you were able to do that with your family.
I just want to do it again.
Yeah.
One important thing while we're kind of talking about this and the mental health and all of that is that, you know, as I was saying earlier, there's people who are genetically predisposed to just not being as happy as other people. And you can't compare yourself to those people, or kind of, you don't know what's going on inside somebody's head, and especially comparing yourself to something you see on social media where it's just utter bullshit and that's not real life. But even in real life, like, there's just some people who are happier. Like, my wife is a much happier human being than me. Like, she's just, it's the same thing as my daughters. Like my oldest daughter is my wife and my youngest daughter is me. And I know that, like, I know what my younger daughter is predisposed to because she has more of my genes, and I understand that she's going to have to work harder to find that happiness and not to be so pessimistic, and that doesn't make her any lesser of a human being. And the fact that maybe she isn't as kind of jovial as her older sister all the time doesn't mean that, like, her life doesn't matter, that she's not seen, that it's not important. Everyone's different, you know, and people find happiness in different things. And some people just aren't going to be as happy of a person, but you can't fault yourself for that. You know, there's ups and downs and waves in life. And I think that, you know, being fulfilled, and ensuring that you are being the best version of yourself and always making progress. You know, maybe today you're not the best version of yourself, but tomorrow you're a little better than you were today. Like, that progress is something to celebrate. Again, it's not about the end goal, and it's not about sunshine on you every single day of your life. It's about the progress, and about feeling fulfilled at the end of the day.
100%. You know, what's the old saying? Is it comparison is the death of growth? Is it
the thief of joy, or something like that? Maybe?
Yes, something like that. Because, like you said, social media, that's not real. Television, you know, I do reality TV, but guess what? It's edited.
Wait, what?
Yeah, I know.
That's not your real hair?
Yeah, no, this is a wig. Look. Yeah, and people forget that. And people, like, I don't know. It's so easy.
Even when you know it.
Yeah.
Even when you know it. Like, I follow a bunch of dirt bikers on Instagram, and, like, they'll nail some trick, and they probably did it 40 times before you that, and you're like, dude, they're so good, they can just nail that trick. And it's like, you know how many times they set up to do that, and you're just like, dude, they nailed it. Like, just so sick.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with business, you know, or, you know, it's not like if you take on something challenging on the job, chances are you're going to make a few mistakes before you perfect it. You know, it takes thousands of hours to perfect something, and even then, you know, there's always room to improve that. So, yeah, I think for me, one thing I've learned in the past couple of years is to just spend less time online. You know, it is unfortunately a negative place. It's a place where you can easily lose yourself comparing yourself to others, or get lost in a vortex of negative comments. I mean, I don't know if you guys deal with this, but just like the fucking trolls.
Oh yeah.
I get more comments about my hair than I do about any positive thing I'm talking about. Like,
yeah. I get jeans.
Yeah.
Like, I would never trust a guy in skinny jeans. He's obviously never swung a hammer.
Yeah, I get that one.
I was like, yeah, I actually bought them at the jeans store that only people that have never swung a hammer can shop.
It's a prerequisite.
At, you know? Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
It's you know, like, going back, like, let's talk about, well, we don't talk about the fitness industry, but like,
let's do it, man. Fuck it, we're covering it all.
But you've talked about fitness and, like, being in the gym and social media. Look at that world. A world, like, I'm very, very much not involved in, but I see it from the outside, and it's like it's very similar to women, right? Like, you know, the makeup and the plastic surgery. It's like, now it's like you're following all these fitness influencers. Like, I follow some because I, you know, whether I do their workouts or maybe I buy some of their products, but it's like they're not natural.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like maybe they don't disclose it. And what we do is, or maybe they do. Maybe they do disclose, hey, like, listen, I'm not natural, but you're looking like, man, dude, like, that dude's jacked. I want to look like that. Yeah. And it's like, well, I mean, you got to start taking steroids. Like, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to work out harder in the gym. It's like, no, that doesn't work.
Well, and also knowing it's like, that is what that person does for a living.
Right.
It's like, you know, let's say they are natural. It's like, okay, how many hours did that take them to get there? You know, I've had this conversation with people like, oh, what would you recommend I do in the gym? I'm like, consistency, you know?
Yeah.
Try and find a consistent schedule. Don't be too hard on yourself when you fall off the bandwagon, but just stick to it. Like it takes, you look at those fitness influencers, it's like that takes years. Even you can
even the guys wrote it out.
Yeah, you guarantee
they've been doing it for a
hard.
decade.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, they're not like just doing nothing and taking HGH or testosterone.
Right.
And
I think Tren is the new one right now.
Tren?
It's
that's what they keep. That's what everyone keeps talking about. Oh, you on Tren? I'm like, what the fuck is Tren?
Yeah. Does it take my aches
I'm like,
away?
Is that a protein shake?
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the same thing where I don't know is that sustainable?
Yeah.
Like, are you going to, if that's the lifestyle that you're leading and that's what you do every single day, like at some point you're not going to be able to do that.
Right.
And like you should be creating habits, lifestyles,
Routine.
diets, within your life that you're able to sustain. If not, at some point you're going to fall flat on your face.
Oh, 100%. I've been there, man. Like when I started working out, like I started working out, I think, seriously when I was 18. And I remember, to me, I was like, Arnold was my hero. I'm like, no pain, no gain, baby. If it doesn't hurt, I'm not doing it right. And then it's like, oh, I got tendonitis in my right shoulder. I've got, a herniated disc in my back. And it's like, there's a right way of doing things and a wrong way of doing things. And it doesn't happen overnight either.
Right.
It's, I forget, I think I got off, I trailed off the point there. I had a point I was going to make and I lost it.
Do you follow Alex Hermosi?
No.
He's like a business guy. He owns like acquisition.com, but he's a big dude. He works out a lot. And he posted something recently and he was talking about how, talking about consistency and from a fitness perspective is that it takes very little time to get yourself into good shape and to maintain, and very little effort to maintain. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. It takes very little effort to maintain good shape, but it takes a lot of effort to continue to build upon that and to be in better and better shape. Like we're talking about, like ultra, cut, whatever, bulked up, whatever. And people underestimate that, where it's like and they fall off the bandwagon because they're like, I'm not progressing. It's like, no, but you're doing pretty little amount of work and you're maintaining a good, healthy life, and you're building
those deep muscles. Like this, like
you're looking for something greater, and you're not going to get it because you're not putting in that extra amount of work that these guys are in the gym for 2.5 hours a day.
Yeah, it's so true. Like people, you don't, and that goes back to what we said. It's like they don't see the amount of work, whether it's physique, business. It's like the amount of work that goes into it. People are like, you're lucky to be there. It's like, well, you know what it took to get here? You don't just like, I did 10 push-ups. It's like, oh shit, you did it. You beat fitness. I did one job. I sold a job. You're successful. It's like,
I'm a contractor.
Yeah. You did a 10-minute license lesson. Now you're a contractor. Yeah, it's there's with the people that are successful. I mean, there's the story that is often not told, or maybe not often overlooked, is the amount of work that it's taken to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening. I'm looking it up right now, but I was listening to something else where they were talking about endurance athletes and kind of the aerobic versus anaerobic training, and like you were just saying with Arnold, where it's like no pain, no gain, and so many people go to train that way, where they're like, hit it as hard as you can for as long as you can, as fast as you can, and like that's how you're going to progress. And it's the same thing when you think of business or career, lifestyle, whatever it may be. Like, that doesn't create endurance and durability. And
maybe you make $1 million real quick, but can you sustain?
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Holy shit, I'm broke again.
So, and I could be wrong here. I believe that like aerobic training is where you can sustain an exercise for a really long time, and anaerobic would be more similar to like a sprint and
like explosive.
Yeah, so like you wouldn't be able to run a marathon on like anaerobic exercise or training, because it's that's just that sprint. You have to build up your aerobic endurance. And like so many people go to train and they train on sprints and pushing themselves, and then they'd have no durability. They can't exercise 2 days in a row, and you actually have to slow down to speed back up, where like you have to start training again and keeping your heartbeat at a lower level to be able to build up the endurance, where you're not like sprinting to go fast for 5 miles, where you're actually like cruising, and then you could run 10 miles and then sprint whatever you need to. But I never even realized that, where like I look back at high school sports and even into college some, and it's like, no, you just beat the shit out of yourself. And like, I guess it's different being 16 to, 21 years old.
Yeah.
But like, you go to get back in shape. And you're like, I got to do what I did back then. This is how we got fit, and this is how we trained, and even in college. And it's like, that is not actually how you build up durability as like an adult, or to be able to sustain that with the body that you have now.
Yeah. I tried that for a while, and my body just started shutting down on me. I was like, I didn't understand the concept of listening to your body. It's like, body's
you
trying
just
to
work through it.
Yeah, because no pain, no gain. So you got to work through the pain to get the gains. It's pretty simple. So, yeah, man, like I remember thinking like numbers. I'm like, I got to just be lifting more, I was benching 315 at my max. I was squatting 315, deadlifting almost 500 pounds. And then my body just like shut down. I was like, all of a sudden I remember deadlifting my last set and then putting the weights down, and I had pins and needles. I'm like, oh, that's so weird. And then that pins and needles feeling didn't go away for days. And I was like, I couldn't lift up a drink to my mouth. I'm like, what the hell? My wife's like, stupid. When are you going to learn? You keep hurting yourself. Doing your dad says you bump your head and you don't do it again. She's like, you keep bumping your head and you're not learning.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, it takes time. You can't. There's no fast forward to like getting back into it.
You gotta love the wife.
Yeah,
it's like
so much.
When I hurt my back, she was like, "What'd you do?" And then she stopped and she goes, "Did you do it at the gym?" I was like, "Yeah." She goes, "Nick, you literally did this like 3 months ago."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Yeah, I know."
Yeah.
She goes, "Did you forget that you were basically crying in the backyard because you couldn't stand?" Yeah. I was like, in the moment, yeah, I did forget that.
Yeah, I did. I was actually just thinking about my gains.
Yeah.
Yep. Totally. Oh, do you guys do you do yoga at all?
No, not.
I don't, but I would like. It's one of those things that I
think about doing it.
Yeah,
a lot.
I feel like I would love to adopt not even just the actual exercise, like obviously the lifestyle that comes along with it, and like from a wellness perspective and meditation and all that. It's just, I am not at the point in my life where I want to spend my time slowing down that much.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds messed up, but it's like right now my exercise is focused more on getting out there and doing things. And I'm okay with that. Like, I don't know where that'll take me in a year. I would love to, but it's like, although I know we just had this conversation, I can't really make much more time for different types of exercise right now that are that accessible. So I'm choosing to kind of take other outlets, but I feel like I would enjoy that.
I've been told by probably 6 professional people, like doctors, and that I don't stretch enough.
That's where I was going to go with this.
And I was like, oh, yeah. I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And they're like, how much time do you spend stretching before you work out or after? I was like, is 0 an option?
There we go. Okay, I'm loose.
I was like,
yeah,
like you just got to stretch. And I was like, give me something to like grab onto that like will make me stretch.
Yeah.
And one of them was like, I mean, you'll be in better shape for a longer period in your life. I was like, oh, okay. I could think about that.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I've been doing yoga a little while now, and it's been a game changer for me. Like I find, for me in general, if I'm not doing some sort of exercise and construction, if I just do construction, my body's like screaming at me. Yeah. It's usually lower back, shoulders, arms.
It's old man strength is construction.
Oh, it's
like, That's like the stuff that like if you're not in construction, you won't ever have that strength.
It's true. It's true. Like, But the aches. So I'm like, what keeps that at bay is exercise. And like you said about the stretching, I'm like, I used to just work out and then, do my, across the chest and whatever it might be, a couple circles, I'm good. And then I can't remember who it was, someone I was training with, they're like, the amount of time you spend weightlifting, you should spend the same amount stretching. And I was like,
but then I can't weightlift.
Yeah, that's it. I'm like, I don't have time. You don't understand. I can't be swole and then, be limber at the same time. Like I got to
part of being swole is not being able to touch my arms together, man.
Exactly. So now, mainly because part of it's a mental thing. Like, I don't know if you guys follow, I follow a lot of people online that are, like Aubrey Marcus. And it's like for my mental health, for my mind, I need to slow down. I do a lot of meditating now, do a lot of like Wim Hof breath work. Yoga has been huge, and that's not why I grew up my hair. People are like, you hippie.
You don't wear shoes ananymore?
Yeah, no, I don't wear shoes.
I just like to be connected
I'm fully
to the earth.
grounded.
Although I do like working out outside, but it's yoga has been like, man, from construction. Like if you're in construction, I think the best thing you can do for yourself, and speaking for myself, is some form of exercise, but yoga is a game changer.
Yeah.
My hips get so tight, my arms, my back, and it's like I'm doing, I'm lucky because my wife owns a holistic health clinic, and part of that, the studio I just renovated, now there's yoga classes, there's core classes there. So I'm like, I'm going to use the space. When there's a class, I'm going to go. So it's like, it's just part of my routine now, and it's a game changer.
Yeah, I would love to have something like that.
Do you have a Peloton or anything?
Yeah.
They have yoga on Peloton. And
yeah, that's what my wife does some. Maybe I'll try it.
You should try it.
Yeah, I'm like not opposed to it at all. It's just like I also am one where I'm gas on, gas off. So when I get into something, I'm typically taking a deep dive. And like that's why I have to control the amount of hobbies that I have, because a lot of times I choose expensive hobbies.
Yeah.
And it's like I wanted to get a mountain bike to like build up endurance. And I'm like, I kind of don't want to, because then it's like I already have a dirt bike hobby that like the bikes are $10,000 and then you just spend however many $1,000 every month like working on them, putting parts on them, maintaining them. And I'm like, I'm going to buy a few $1,000 bicycle and then just be doing the same shit with that. And I'm like, I'm not even going to entertain that. Like no bike right now.
And then I don't know about you guys. I'm of the mentality where I'm like, if I'm going to buy something, I want to buy something quality, because I don't want to have to buy it multiple times, because then you're spending the same amount of money. And that is not a cheap mentality either. But
exactly.
Like, golfing, I just said I started to golf because I need something. For me, I need to slow down more, so I started golfing. I walk the course.
That's an expensive.
That's an expensive.
That can be very expensive.
I bought a new set of clubs, and my wife used to golf a lot when she was a kid, and she competed. And she's like, Titleist is what you want to buy. So she ended up buying me a set of clubs, but it was like, I'm like thinking, I want to get this club, and then I look at the price, I'm like, I don't need it that bad.
Yeah. And then balls.
Yeah, the ball, I just get, like, I'm not good enough that a ball, I'm like, this scuffed up secondhand ball is going to work just as well for me as this brand new Titleist ball.
When I go looking for mine, I collect all the other ones.
Same. I'm like, you look at me in the course running around. The other night I went, and they were shooting a video on the course I was at, and they had these brand new Pinnacle balls. And I was like, you would think that I'd owned 0 golf balls. I'm running around the course picking up every one because they're just hitting them and leaving them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's...
You find the pink one in the woods. It's like, guys, I have a pink one now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, now I'll see this every time.
Yeah. That's the hope anyway. Yeah.
Michael, this was awesome, man.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure chatting with you guys. I love the deep chats. I love talking about it all, man.
It's cool. It's cool to get to know you, and I'm glad we went down some of the rabbit holes we did, and I thought we were gonna argue more on the podcast based on my DM.
Yeah,
how I disagreed with you, but no, in all seriousness, I think it's a complicated issue.
Yeah,
and it's beyond just our industry; it's our society. And what was interesting to me as the conversation kind of evolved on how this really all does come back to like yourself.
Yeah.
and like who you are and what you can control, and we can all be advocates for this industry and good advocates, and put our best foot forward in making this a great place to work. But the truth is, there's going to be a lot of little steps in order for us to, should I say, correct what has been broken.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not there isn't going to be these giant leaps or this one thing that can fix everything. It's a collective effort from everyone.
Totally. And I expected a little bit of disagreement, but I feel like we're pretty on the same page. And hey, you know what? Social media, you can only explain so much, right? Unless it's like a podcast. So I had a feeling we're going to just dive into it and we're going to work it out. And I'm really glad that, we could have done this. I'm happy that I came on. I'm happy we chatted, got to know each other a little bit better. And, you said something earlier that really resonated with me. And that was, you're like, and you touched on it again now, which is just like focusing on ourselves. You said, I have to focus on myself first. And It's like, there's a cliche analogy of like the mask on the plane. When if the plane's going down and you need to get the oxygen, you can't help anyone else if you don't have oxygen. Right. It's like, you want to be a better husband? Well, or a better colleague, better friend. You can't do any of that if you don't focus on yourself. So it's like, find what drives you and start there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, it's funny. Like, I've said that a handful of times, and some people are like, "Well, that's because you're self-centered." It's like, I mean,
I've been told that too. To be fair. Yeah.
I mean, okay, maybe I'm a little narcissistic, but like, you kind of have to be.
Yeah.
And but at the end of the day, I want to be in good health because my family relies on me.
Yeah.
And I want to be in good health because my business relies on me.
Totally.
And in the past, and when I have put other things before me, I could feel myself breaking down. Mm-hmm. I wasn't healthy. I wasn't getting as good of a night's sleep. I wasn't as productive at work. I was letting shit slide. Like it. You have to be number one.
Yeah. You get more selfish. That's if you're finding life's getting out of control, get a little more selfish. Focus on yourself a little bit more, and then you might have a little more control.
I like that.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you guys. I hope we can chat again. This was fun.
Yeah. I'll circle back when I start doing some yoga.
Yeah, let me know how it goes.
You can just see me stretch. I'm gonna be all limber with like my leg above my head during the whole podcast.
Let's start group Zoom yoga.
I'm in.
All right.
I'll send out an invite for tonight's class.
Tonight? I'm not ready now.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
I like that. Cool, man.
All right, guys.
Well, we will definitely link up again, and we'll chat soon.
Yeah, and if you ever shoot me a DM or we can exchange numbers or something after this if you guys ever want to chat.
Cool, man.
Cool. All right, guys.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Later.
See ya.
So there's a leave button up in the right. You can't. I don't know why it's there because you can't click it.
I noticed that.
No one can click it.
Yeah.
So all you got to do is X out of the browser. All your data is already uploaded on our end. So.
Okay. So you got my credit card info and shit already. Okay. Cool.
Exactly. We just need your social.
We just need to keep you on for 2 hours and then we have everything.
Yeah. No, I sent over my social in the email. You're good.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Okay, guys.
All right, Michael. Yeah. Nice to meet you. He's a cool dude.
Yeah. I feel like every interview with him probably digs into like his dad and everything else.
Oh, I was like, I don't want to ask a single question about his dad. I've been in that side of like, it all being, about your dad because you work for him. And it's like, no, it's about Michael.
Yeah, that was cool. Didn't anticipate it going that direction, but always a good time.
Yeah, for sure.
Now I kind of want to go do yoga.
I do want to do yoga. And
I've always wanted to.
Same. And there's one near my house, and I'm like, I wonder if I should look up the schedule. I stretched this morning. Actually, this morning.
Do some toe touches.
I can touch my toes. Not if my
crisscross
leg's perfect.
Applesauce.
I cannot sit.
Don't
Indian
say
style.
it. You can't say that anymore, man.
You can't?
Nah, it's crisscross applesauce.
I cannot sit crisscross applesauce like at all.
Really?
Meg thinks it's the weirdest thing.
You gotta start doing yoga.
I sit and I fall backwards. She's like, sit up straight. I'm like, okay. And like, I don't know. It's just not, it's very, very uncomfortable for me.
I
But
think
no,
that's
I was doing,
a sign that you are not very evolved as a
Okay.
human. Yeah.
but I can literally squat and touch my ass on the floor and then stand right back up.
Well, that's not crisscross applesauce, though.
No, it's like the reverse.
Oh, that's a good
I
talent.
think, you know what? I think I sat like you're not supposed to with your legs out instead of
Oh,
in.
yeah.
You know, my Meg always yells at the kids when they sit like that. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's how I sat my whole life.
Yeah, I remember there used to be a handful of kids. Like, I can still name a few of them that sat like that in school.
What? Dude, I wouldn't. How do you know that?
Just because, like, I remember them sitting like that, and it was a big deal when we were little for them not to sit like that. They're like, you're going to hurt your knees.
You want to know something else I can't do?
What? Touch your tongue with your nose. No,
I can
touch
do
your
that.
nose with your tongue.
No, this is serious. And
What?
I know I'm going to get made fun of for this. I can't tie my shoes unless I do the bunny ears.
Oh, really?
I have no idea how to do it with a single loop.
That's pretty bad.
Meg was like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I've never learned. No one's ever taught me how to tie my shoes the other way.
Dude, YouTube.
But
Have your
why do I
kid-
need to
have
know
your
that?
Kid teach you.
Why do I need
just,
to know?
Just so that you have, you don't want to be a one-trick pony.
Meg was like, oh, you can tell because your laces aren't even. I'm like, stop it. I'm like, that's going to screw me up.
Yeah.
Like, my laces are fine. She goes, no, see how they're kind of angled? When you tie them the other way, they sit flat.
Oh,
I'm like,
God.
no, they don't. Stop. And the other day, I was like, let me try. And I froze. I was like, I have no idea.
It's brutal.
Yeah. So.
Well, you heard it here first.
I don't even know where to go with that.
I think, yeah. I mean, I don't know if we could be friends anymore.
Oh, shut up. Shut up.
I don't think I know how to do bunny ears.
What? Oh, God.
Probably figure it out.
Well, next week we got Ollie Stevens.
That's a cool name.
It is. He's down in Australia. Hungry Wolf Studio. Guys, if you don't follow him, check him out before we hop on with him. He's got a pretty epic concrete company. He does some crazy decorative concrete, and he's got a ton of cool content. I'm definitely going to ask him about his work uniform because I'm pretty sure he's wearing like Chubby's bathing suits with, then a t-shirt, like a company t-shirt on top. He's got like pink and blue shorts on. I'm like, dude, this guy's having the time of his
Concrete
life.
guys, man.
Concrete guys, swimsuit, hose him off.
That and just some muck boots.
Yeah, well, he probably does have some muck boots on in some cases. But we'll hop on with him next week. And as always, thanks to our sponsors, Duration, Molding and Millwork, and Rockwool.